Good morning. This is Milani Douglas for another episode of Curative Collective. Today, I am so excited to have our guests. We have Lisa Pegram. She is an international writer and also literary acquisition and facilitator. She is an agent helping people get their books written as well as her. And she knows how to do it because she is a writer. Okay. So a lot of her work is food-based, which is why we have her speaking as a part of Reclamation. She has already submitted a recipe to Reclamation that you can find about the papaya salad. And she's also a huge part of the DC arts community. That's where we both have a lot of our base. But you will find in this conversation that the reach is far and wide, as well as the food that comes across her table. I am happy to tell one of my first stories with you is a food story.
Oh, tell me.
Yes. Well, one of our first times that we got to hang out, I think we were listening to Estero.
You introduced me to Estero's first album. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And in your car.
So in my car.
You said we have to stop right now. And I think we listened to the whole album sitting in your car. Yes.
And then you had invited me over and had some beautiful nosh and mints and all kind of flavors that were happening. And we were listening to, I think we were listening to Marvin Gaye's.
Yes, indeed. The I Want You album. Yes, indeed. I Want You album. That was the same summer that the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill came out. Isn't it interesting that food and music really trigger memory, I find?
Wow. And then both of us were on our way to some sort of international destination. And we were like, well, we need bikinis, honey. So
That's right. We
were shopping for those as well. So we go way back, and I'm so glad that it's a full circle moment. Once again, we are brought together around food, around the amazing work that you are doing. So following in the footsteps of Mother Toni, is this what's happening?
It's so interesting that you asked that, because that is exactly what happened. I had a moment, a light bulb moment or an epiphany moment. Actually, the last time I was in the States was in February 2020, right before the pandemic hit. I literally got back just in time before travel halted. And on the flight, I watched the Toni Morrison Pieces of Me, Pieces I Am, the documentary on her life.
Right.
And I've always been a huge Toni Morrison fan in terms of her writing and her books. I mean, she's a huge influence on me. But I had no idea until I saw that documentary of all the work that she did in publishing.
Yes.
I mean, she was the first, was it Random House? And she was the first Black woman editor there. And there are so many books. We would have people like Angela Davis. We wouldn't have Angela Davis books if it weren't for Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
So when I discovered all of the work that she did to paved the way in publishing, which is not a very diverse industry. It wasn't then, still isn't now. But to kind of break that open and much more than it had been before. And when I found out that she was a trailblazer in publishing, I just had this spark, like this is what it is. This is the missing piece that I didn't know was missing. And it happened sort of organically. And then I was teaching at the time. And then during the pandemic, that slowed down. And then someone offered me an opportunity to dip my toe into literary publicity. And I just took to it like a duck to water. And once I was in the publishing world, that's when I was just, oh yeah, books. This is what I need to be doing. As someone who has been a voracious reader since I was 3 years old, the idea of actually being part of the world of books was just this very natural, organic transition. And then we had this second pandemic of all of the racial strife that was happening in our country at the time. And, we're all asking ourselves, what can we do?
Right.
And my grandmother always said, when you are choosing your route for activism, you have to do something that you can sustain, something that is aligned with what you already do, so that you can continue to do it in an ongoing way. And I thought about it and I said, I'm in another country right now, so I can't organize or be part of rallies or be boots on the ground in that kind of way. But one of the most important parts of any movement is books, is the word.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of this kind of happened simultaneously. And then it just struck me, yes, I would love to be an agent for helping underrepresented writers
Mm-hmm.
get their work into the world. It is often books that represent us to different people, different things, different stories, different perspectives. It's really hard to um, shut something out when you align, let's say in a novel, with a protagonist.
Right.
This protagonist might have nothing to do with your cultural background, nothing that is familiar to you, but once you are on board for their journey and you want to see them win by the end, that could be a transformative process. So
Mm-hmm.
I decided that books were going to be my route, and I've just been off to the races ever since.
And you really have. I mean, I have a book here actually that, first of all, I just want to say that anything of any person that you have sent me related to their work is beautiful. Visually, it's just beautiful.
Yes. Well, the
So
bar is high.
the bar is high,
The
honey,
bar is
and
high.
we are not mad at that. We are not at all. That's exciting. So this book is so beautiful. I mean, I just want to
Gorgeous.
show
The
our audience
Orishi
just,
Rishi Cookbook by Tola Akerele. Yes, that
tell
is
us
a
about
gorgeous
this.
book. So Tola was working in finance, but she has always been someone who has just kind of been naturally a sort of lifestyle maven. I'm super excited. I think you're going to be talking to Tola in a couple of weeks too.
November 8th.
November 8th, you'll be talking to Tola here.
Mm-hmm.
And so she eventually left her work in finance in the UK and went back to her home country of Nigeria
Mm-hmm.
and opened a boutique hotel and a cultural center called Bogobiri House. And so in this
Wow.
boutique hotel is these beautiful rooms where she was able to exercise her talents as an interior designer, but then also downstairs there was a restaurant and there's a cultural center, art gallery, and in the restaurant, she was introducing traditional Nigerian dishes. And what I find so beautiful about the photography in that book is she was saying that she wanted to introduce people to traditional Nigerian food who weren't familiar with it, and found often that it was the aesthetics that people sort of couldn't get on board with. And so it was important to her to not only introduce the recipes, but to present them in a really beautiful way to entice people to want to try the food. And so she created this beautiful book. And I have another author that I've worked with too, Susan Rackstein. She wrote this gorgeous book called Cooking for Her Eyes. Same thing, a Japanese American family. Her mom came to the States. Well, her family moved from Hawaii to the mainland. And when they were integrating into the mainstream culture, her mother was an extraordinary cook, but she found that people would not eat her food because they thought it was different. And so she became a master at creating these gorgeous presentations that were just so beautiful that people couldn't help but try it. So I feel really fortunate that in the course of 1 year that I've worked with these two cookbooks that have really been the story of families wanting to introduce their cultural food to other people, and doing so through the eyes. Don't we say we eat from the eyes first?
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I have these two books, the Orishi Rishi Cookbook and Cooking for Her Eyes, that are these beautiful examples of how you can use not only the flavors, but also the beauty, what you talk about in Reclamation, the art of the table,
Yes.
right? To introduce people to new things.
Well, I mean, job well done for you, and then also the people you're working with. I got a chance to pull up Cooking for Her Eyes, the website, and off the top you can see just beauty. There's music. There's all kind of wonderful pictures there. So if you get a chance to check that out as well, we'll have to find a way to talk to her because this looks very interesting.
Oh, and how about this? On top of that, she also is a pianist. And so the format of the book was inspired by a classical piece. I believe it was a Beethoven classical piece.
Wow.
So the book, the literary structure of the book mirrors the structure of this symphony. Right?
It says here what she heard in the 3 movements of Piano Sonata Number 8 in C
That's
minor.
right.
Okay.
That's right. And so that's the flow of the book. So you're getting food and music. And so, this is what you get from Susan's book. I think I'm discovering also in my own writing that as I'm trying to pull up memories, just like we were talking earlier about when we sat there and listened to that Estero and we had those lovely meals at my house. I remember eating some great sushi with you.
Yes.
I'm finding as I'm trying to recall different times in my life, if I tap into the food and the music, the memories flow. All of the other details will come probably from the sensual experience of tapping into the tastes, the sounds. So it really is this notion of living art being a spark for memory or a storehouse and inventory for memory.
You know, it's so interesting this weekend. I attended a backyard event at Head Rock's house. And John Chambers of Bloom Bars was there, and it was for Ross D. Ross D.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, he has a new book called "Stay in the Light," and I was having a conversation with John Chambers, and he was talking about research related to Alzheimer's and how they're finding that music is the one thing that is not forgotten.
Yes.
Right. That music is like that deep, you know, someone could be completely in another dimension. Because I dare not say that they're not here. I may just not be there.
Okay.
Let's just be clear.
let's be clear.
Respect where everybody is.
Indeed.
So they may be in a different, but another dimension. But what brings them to this reality or this dimension is music.
Indeed.
And I find that so fascinating to like how what you were saying as far as healing, the food, the sense, and also people know smell is a strong trigger.
Huge
for
trigger.
Memory, you know? And so and with Reclamation, we've been talking a lot about healing and what are these like recipes, remedies, and rituals of healing. And I love this idea of how, you know, a lot of people in their healing process may be including more smells and more sounds of time periods that they want to either remember or, you know, assign new memories to. That just sounds, it sounds rich.
Indeed. It's so interesting. Even maybe smells that you maybe had an aversion for in a different context are reframed. So I was recently writing about the time that I was in California. After college, I moved to California for 2 years. I volunteered for the United Farm Workers. Full-time volunteer, was living in a group house full of campesinos, most of them fresh to the States from Mexico. And so I learned a lot. Everybody always asks why I always make Mexican food. Well, that's because I was 21. This was my first time out as an adult, and I lived in a house full of Mexicans for 2 years. And so that was a lot of foundational cooking for me. But I remember one day walking to the house and someone was making menudo, which is like a soup made of tripe. And I walked in the door and the smell of it cooking instantly reminded me of chitlins. Instantly. Yes. There's a certain smell, right?
There's a smell.
There's a smell. And I remember that smell being something that I was not happy about on New Year's when Nana Brown used to make chitlins every year for New Year's. Not my favorite thing on the table. I wanted the black eyed peas, the cornbread.
And the collard greens.
But I wasn't big on the chitlins, okay? Right. But you know, Nana Brown is now gone from us, and that was a childhood memory. And I was in California, long away from my family or anyone that I knew. I was the only Black American person in that home, and when I walked in that door and smelled something that reminded me of chitlins, it was a comfort.
Yeah.
It was a comfort. So that speaks to what you were saying about how this old memory of this sensual memory can trigger something that completely even reframes that memory. That it was a comfort to me to smell that tripe boiling on that stove in our group house that day.
Well, that is such a powerful story because I know how strong that smell is, and I know how it's one of those things you either deeply love or you deeply hate. So to have it, because you're so far away from home, move you to a place of comfort. I hope that you are including that story as a part of the book that you're writing on.
It's in there. It is indeed. That story is in there.
So let's talk about your book. Because in the tradition of Mother Tony, it would not be fair if you were being a publicist to others and not a writer of your own thing. So let's talk about your book.
Indeed. So I am working right now on a family memoir that sort of juxtaposes the experiences of my mother, my grandmother, and I through food and music. And that was not even necessarily what I set out to do in the beginning. In the beginning, okay, so how it started was I always said the first book I ever wrote, my first prose book, because I've written poetry, you know, I've been in the poetry world for a long time. And so I decided the first prose book I wrote, I wanted to be about my grandmother, or in some way, shape, or form to honor my grandmother, because she's such a spectacular person. She was an educational icon during the civil rights movement. She was the dean of education at Virginia State University for like 40 years, really strong in the HBCU circuit. And she's one of these quiet heroes, right? Someone who maybe you could go by and no one would ever know the work that she did, and she would be fine with that just because she impacted people. And so I always said that I wanted to write about her in some way. And when I got ready to write, people were also asking me for a cookbook because I was doing so much cooking at the time. I had a little side hustle as a personal chef. People were like, when is this cookbook coming? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write a book. Which one is it going to be? The one about my grandmother is going to be the cookbook. And then it struck me, well, I learned to love cooking and entertaining very much through my grandmother.
Wow.
My grandmother was the hostess with the mostest. My grandfather was the president of the NAACP in Petersburg. And when people came to town, because it was during Jim Crow, you know, they had to host people at the house.
That's right.
They stayed with people. You stayed with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my grandmother became, you know, the hostess with the mostest. And so she really ingrained that in me, the power of the table, the power of what happens when conversations happen at the table. And so it struck me that I didn't have to choose, that I could tell the story through the same lens. So I started writing about food and her impact on me and about her. And, you know, a book will tell you what to write. Like you go in thinking you know what you're going to do. And the book was like, but what about you, though? But what about you, though? If you're carrying on this legacy. And so I found myself suddenly writing more about myself than I had intended in the beginning. And then it has just been sort of this really beautiful experience of the story revealing itself to me very much through these memories of food and music and entertaining. And so now it's this sort of reverberation, if you will, of memories that span all three of our lives.
Yeah, and that is a true testimony to the fact that you are honoring the work that your grandmother did, because if in writing about her you continue to see yourself, then that means you're living her work.
That's right.
And you know that you're continuing it on, because as you continue to see her, and when you look at her you see yourself.
That's right.
And to think about, you know, how many discussions and how much evolution in this society happen at the table in your grandparents' house.
That's right. My grandmother had Dr. King sit at her table for dinner. My grandmother sat in the middle of her rug and drank a whole bottle of Johnny Walker with Maya Angelou. Right, there are these stories, and she would just tell me these stories while we would be setting the table, and I'd be looking at her like, do you understand what you're saying? You just told me that Duke Ellington came over for lunch. You know, but what the powerful thing about that is then when I started doing my own work in education and activism, I did the same thing. You know, I will always invite people over to eat. You, when you have come to my house to eat, have eaten off of the same plates because I inherited them from my grandmother. You've eaten off those same plates that were sitting on the table when she, right? And so this book for me very much is a kind of if these plates could talk, because these plates have been passed down from one generation to the next. They have the stories.
Wow.
They have the stories.
Wow. I hope you have some beautiful pictures of those plates, because oh my gosh.
Well, one of those plates is in the reclamation piece that I submitted last year with the papaya salad on it. Yes,
honey, because if there's anybody that can lay a table, Lisa can lay a table. Listen, it's an art to these things.
Indeed. And I've kind of taken that sort of as a general like philosophy for my life. And you'll see sometimes on Mondays on my Instagram, I post this thing called Set the Table. It's this
Yeah.
notion of a literal setting of the table, but also that intentional of like clearing spaces and making, when you set a table, I feel like there's two things involved. You've got
Yeah.
utility and you've got beauty.
Mm.
So it's what are we trying to accomplish with this meal, right? What do I need to serve this meal? If it's soup, I need a bowl, I need a spoon, not a fork, right? So you've got utility, but then also what conversations do you want to happen at the table? And then where can space be made for beauty? Your candles, your flowers, your my grandmother taught me that everything in your house could possibly end up on the table. If you got a little figurine sitting somewhere, you don't have to go out and buy
Right.
tableware. Like what is the little pieces of art you have around your house, or a little flower from your bush outside, or some
Yeah.
stones? How can you bring your environment on to the table? So this
table.
notion of setting the table, both literally and theoretically, has sort of now become a due north for me.
It's so important that you say that, because I think that, and I love tablescapes, as far as like when I see
Mhm.
these very fancy, tablescapes that are happening, and how people are going to different stores and making these elaborate, sets.
They're
But it's
gorgeous.
and they're gorgeous, and you can have beauty in your home that also can become this
Mhm.
experience as well. In the conversation we recently had with Jessica B. Harris, she spoke about how she makes, I asked her, I said, well, how do you make your research enjoyable? Because this woman, I mean, does so much
Mhm.
research,
So prolific.
so prolific in
So
the work that she
prolific.
does. And I said, well, how do you make the process just enjoyable? And she said, having beautiful things to do the work that I want to do. The beautiful pen, the beautiful paper, the beautiful
That's right.
table.
That's right.
And when I'm drying my dishes, I have a certain towel that I like. And I was like, wow, bringing all elements of the senses into even the most mundane of our experience. And I think that's important to think about that as a cooking as well, because sometimes I remember just, the snapping of the peas and some things
Mhm.
that could be seen as mundane, but somebody's humming, or there's
Mm-mm.
something that's happening that makes it almost like a meditative experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think what you say is so profound too, because so often we have sort of been trained to reserve beauty for special occasions,
Oh, come on now.
right? Can you pull that good china out on a Wednesday?
Yes.
On a Wednesday? Why do we only have to reserve it for a special occasion or a holiday? The notion of bringing a simple, just like you were saying with Dr. Harris, something simple as the pen you choose, the paper that you're writing on, the towel that you use, just bringing these small pieces of beauty into your everyday process, as you
Hmm.
say, is a meditation in itself.
Yeah. And to bring it full circle to your grandmother and your grandfather, we couldn't wait till special occasions to bring out the
Mm-mm,
china and the
mm-mm.
fancy materials, because it could be any given Tuesday, okay, that Duke Ellington or
That's
Dr.
right.
King or Maya Angelou is walking through the door. And so it's I think that's something beautiful. We have to also think about the beauty of these moments where we went into each other's houses, and it wasn't like a special occasion. They were in town. These people
Mm-hmm.
are traveling, they're speaking, they're doing different occasions, and they're coming into your space. And so the beauty must always be ready, you
Always
know?
be ready. Always be ready.
Yes.
I mean, I remember when, I came up in the DC poetry golden era in the 90s, when
Yeah.
all of us were going to It's Your Mug every Tuesday. And I remember
Mhm.
that Tony Lightfoot and Holly Bass used to have these diva brunches that were
Honey.
amazing. And listen, I know there were these amazing conversations that were had. There was beautiful poetry that was read in those mornings. But I don't remember any of the conversations, but I remember that Holly Bass used to freeze flowers in ice cubes.
Yeah.
She used to
You won't forget
freeze
it.
his little blooms in ice cubes, right? And so when you had
Yeah.
your little mimosa or your little signature cocktail for the
Yes.
day, right? And I remember that this is now, I don't even know how many years
I
ago.
mean, it's got to be
It's
25
got to be
years ago.
25 years ago, right?
And
And I
Holly
remember
always
that
has a nice touch.
it's these small notions of
Yes.
beauty. One other thing that I got from my grandmother that I thought was so beautiful was she said, my ability to create a fancy meal only came later in my career. She started doing it when she first started as a teacher. She said, girl, I ain't had no money. So I had these nice plates, but sometimes I was on a teacher's budget. She said, sometimes I have to serve spaghetti because it was a whole lot of people. And I had to, or I had to make stews, or I had to make, I had to make food that could stretch to feed a lot of people because you got these special guests, you got their entourage, you got whoever. And she's like, it would just be on my budget. But I would lay a beautiful table. Because those dishes were always in my house, right?
Some stew with some potatoes on some beautiful china. It always seems to stretch a little bit further.
Right? Right?
It seems to stretch a little. We can get a little bit more out of that.
Right?
That is so beautiful. And I just, it's so amazing to see people like kind of carry these traditions and how that carries into your friendships and how those are the things that we do. I mean, listen, you and I will sit up here on a Zoom call during the pandemic.
That's right. Always lunch meeting. Always a lunch meeting. Always a lunch meeting. And the first thing we do is show each other what we're eating. It's the first thing we do. That's, again, it's a meeting, but you're just taking a moment to recognize the beauty and recognize the beauty first.
Right.
It's just as simple as that. It's it's funny, Milani, when I meet you for lunch on Zoom, I am always pretty intentional about making my food beautiful for myself because that's something that I do for myself.
Yes.
But I'm picking my food when I have lunch with you over Zoom, like I'm picking an outfit. Like I'm picking an outfit, like what am I gonna rock on this plate or in this bowl today? Because I already know she gonna come in here with some kind of transcendent kale situation going on. Let me make sure I got an extra roast on this sweet potato. You know what I'm saying? But to have that be part of your process preparing for a business meeting.
Yes.
Right?
And the joy that comes with that.
And what happens to a conversation? What happens in a conversation that starts with that impetus?
Yeah. It can only lead to the creation of even more beautiful things because we're coming to the meeting nourished. We're coming to the meeting excited. We're coming to the meeting already curious because we know we're going to see something. And okay, so here's the funny part about the sensory thing. Like it's certain things that I'm like, I want to wait to a certain moment before the meeting because I still want the house to like the kitchen and where I'm sitting smell like the fresh herb I just broke. You know?
Indeed.
We're so extra, but we do extra things, so we got to be extra.
The extra has to be pervasive.
Yes.
Pervasive.
Do everything. And it doesn't stop. And I will say that I think that during this pandemic, one of the beautiful things is, getting back to that place where you're like, wait a minute, I got to be in here every day. Well, I need to do for myself what I've done when I present myself to the world. I need to make, okay, I still wear perfume. It's the craziest thing. But it's okay, I need to make my food or make my tea or, make it special for me because it gets to be different every day. And for my household and for my family, or for my, for my sister when we on a business meeting together, like to make it happen. And I just think that's such a beautiful part of like, and also a strategy of how we have endured and been able to make something very different from this pandemic experience.
Indeed. And I think it's important to note that beauty is not a frivolous thing. Yes. Right? It's not, people always it's interesting that we use this word extra, right? Which is so often assigned to beauty. What it really is it's assigned to beauty. Like, oh, you being extra, right?
Yes.
But why not? Why is beauty extra though?
Right.
Like, why is beauty not integral?
And it's so funny you bring that up because I feel we're in a time that the idea of beauty can be so skewed that people have to do so many extra things to reach this skewed idea of beauty. We grew up in a time period and there's so many generations before, where natural beauty or the beauty that you come with is such a fulfilling state, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you
Mm-hmm.
have these women, when I look back at different times, regardless of race, regardless of any kind of like how they identified on the gender spectrum, they had a way about
Yes.
them that was
Yes.
so strong, and that it could come through any still photo. You
That's
could
right.
see it. You could
Right.
see there, and
Anywhere in the world.
anywhere
Anywhere
in
in
the
the
world,
world.
honey.
Yes,
I mean,
indeed.
and it wouldn't fit in today's very skewed
Mm-mm.
idea of a body type or skin
Mm-mm.
type and this, that, and the other. But you can't deny the beauty.
No, you can't.
You cannot deny. I mean, even when I look at some of the older photos coming out of like the Middle East, or coming out of like older Turkey, and older, like different photos from all parts of course Africa, and then
Mm-hmm.
of course old photos in United States. I mean, women are stunning. Like, I
That's right.
just
In Asia, you see photos of
Asia, I mean,
women in
anywhere globally,
India or Bali in 1923.
anywhere. Oh,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
stunning. And you can look and see that, and whereas now this thing is so far, you see
Mm-hmm.
so many women do so many extra things just to get to what is accepted as beauty. When I think I have to support what you're saying, where beauty is already so integrated in all of us
Mm-hmm.
and in everything that we do, that it's definitely a time to kind of like reclaim that as well. Reclaim the aesthetic of what is, and
Indeed.
taking what we have to really bring that forward in a beautiful way. The same way we do it in the kitchen. We have an aesthetic and a beauty of a dinner of what is. We're
That's
gonna
right.
take what is here.
That's right. That's right. What
We're
is,
gonna
and we're
make
going to make
something
it work.
beautiful and good,
Let
and
me
make
tell
it.
you, that salad, the papaya salad from my reclamation submission last year,
Mm-hmm.
that that came from ultimately working with the scraps,
Yes.
right? You can
Mm-hmm.
make that salad with kind of, if you got a little bit of papaya or mango, a little bit of avocado,
Right.
a third of a quarter of an onion, and a little cilantro or something. You see what I'm saying? Half of a lime. So this is
Yes.
not, and yet you create this testimony, this edible testimony of abundance
Mm.
from what's in fact just not wasting food, right? So I think what you're talking about too is this notion of beauty being an internal process as well,
Yeah.
as opposed to the performative notion of beauty that is really less about what rises up inside of you and brings you joy, right?
Mm.
Because it's got to bring you joy before it goes out and brings anyone else. When you were talking about putting on perfume, I love that during the pandemic, right? Because we had an extended period of time. So if you're in fact only supposed to perform beauty,
Right.
so you're supposed to go for a year and a half, two
Honey, with
years
no
with
perfume.
no beauty,
Yeah.
with no beauty,
Not doing it.
right? If you ain't going out of the house, if you're not, then so when is the beauty going to come in? Or when we talk about, our ancestors and our elders, and we are products. Look at us.
Yeah.
Look at you
Okay.
sitting over there in those pearls with them drop earrings, and look at me over here sitting here with this jade strand and these
Okay.
earrings. We are products of our upbringing, of the beauty that we were inspired by the people who came before us, and they came before us in times that were often not beautiful,
Right. Right.
and yet
Mm-hmm.
they are our first role models for beauty. They did not wait until things got better to
Yes.
exercise beauty. In
Mm.
fact, they were masters of beauty, perhaps maybe even because of the turbulence of their times.
Mm.
So I think that is also a meditation and a tribute and an offering to participate, to continue that tradition of keeping beauty as a part of your regular flow, is part of carrying a legacy.
And I want to go back to what you're saying about the masters of beauty because of the times. And what I want to say about that is, when your aesthetic is not appreciated or not whatever understood, appreciated, uplifted, celebrated by a dominant culture, quote unquote. The beauty of that is that it eliminates you from having to satiate that gaze. It eliminates the gaze. It's like,
How about
you know,
that?
I remember one time my mother had said to me, you know, middle school, everybody's awkward. And it was like, I was like, you know, they just don't like me, you know?
They
And I
don't
just was
get
like, I
it.
can't get
Yes,
it right.
yes,
I
that's
can't get it
right.
right, Mommy.
That's right. That's right. Been there.
But what she said is, she said, well, isn't that wonderful? And I was like, what?
Mm,
She said, because now you can do whatever you want to do. Nobody's going to like it anyway. So only person that has to like it is you.
it's you.
And so the originality that can come from not having to appease another person's
Mm-hmm.
gaze,
Mm-hmm.
it's making me think of like, it's only natural that during this time, during this pandemic, one, because a certain percentage of our population had the time. And then also those of us who had the time, a lot of us provided for those who didn't have the time. So we
That's
had
right.
to get, our families got a little bigger, you know, we had to
Mm-hmm.
expand how we reach out to each other. But not having to perform, like kind of limit the box or put it in a lunchbox and kind of compact it, it allowed some creativity and allowed us to get
Mm-hmm.
back to that. And it just reminds me that it's always beautiful. The
It's
times
always
are
beautiful.
always.
And beauty will save your life. I mean, think about how we got through the most intense part of the quarantine. Look what happened with D Nice.
Yeah.
Even the
Mm-hmm.
people who quote unquote didn't have time to create some kind
Yeah.
of gorgeous tablescape in their house, whatever business they were handling in their house, they were listening to that music.
And
They were
and
showing up to hear
yes.
that music because it was bringing beauty into their space. This notion of art and beauty really saved our lives. I used to
Yeah.
get on Instagram once a week and do a dance class with Debbie Allen
Oh
for
my
her
God, didn't she
Instagram
do that?
live.
She
Did
sure
she
did
do
that.
that?
Yes,
Right?
she did. I loved it. I was in
Right?
class
How
with
many people
Shani.
started making sourdough bread during the pandemic?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
this
It's a
no
whole lot of batches of kombucha and beer.
kombucha. Okay. Okay. Because of this
Yeah.
time, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is, and these things are extra, right? In
Right.
our everyday lives, when we take time to
Yes.
do these things, to create this beautiful processes, engage in them, we don't have time for it, right? But it gave us the opportunity to slow down
Yeah.
and get real essential about what could bring
Mm-hmm.
us joy in our spaces. And I hope that is
Yeah.
something, that is a bell that was struck that won't be unrung, right?
I
So I
hope
think
so
that's
too. And it made us
important
intentional.
thing.
It made us intentional because a lot of us, many people were well aware. Not everybody got to slow down. And
That's
so when
right.
you created something, actually, some people, their lives sped on up. And so when you created something, it's like, at least for me, I felt like, wow, think about the person who only has 2 minutes and the person who has all day, right? Because we had a very varied experience in
Very,
this pandemic,
very wide range of
very
experience.
wide range, you know, and so you had to, you know, consider a wider range of experiences, but all of that could be shaped through what we were experiencing individually and collectively at home. I am very curious as to know, when is your book? Give us a timeline for your book coming up. Does it have a title?
Okay, so those are details that I am not going to quite share yet. I'm going to have to come back and talk to
You
you.
might have to come back
Oh,
then. Shoot.
there is a title, and you're going to fall all the way out when you hear it.
Can't wait.
Indeed. But you are in the very soon in the coming year, you will be hearing all of the details. And in the meantime, the entry that I did last year with the papaya salad, and then I'm going to contribute to Reclamation again this year.
Good.
And both of the stories that are attached to them are excerpts from the book.
Awesome.
You get a little taste.
Well, if you want to experience and have some more time with Lisa this spring, she's going to be hosting and working with us on the book club. We'll have you some more details with the audience about that.
So excited
But you
about
can
that.
find her on Instagram And if Amanda could put, you can find her at Lady Peacock on IG. And then also, if you leave anything in the comments, we can make sure that you get connected. But reach out to her on Instagram, and also stay tuned for Tola, who is one of her clients, and is going to be on November 8th as a part of Reclamation and Curative Collective. Going to be talking about this book right here, talking about her residency or her boutique hotel, is it? Right?
Yes,
Her
indeed.
boutique hotel in Nigeria, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so we'll be getting a chance to talk about that as well. Now, Lisa, you and I, we could keep this thing going until
Honey.
we could just keep going, and it will be
Yes,
rich,
indeed.
rich. But I am so glad that you are able to join us today and have this conversation. I am excited about the work that your clients are doing in the literary agency. So happy to see food as an integral part of their work and your work. And it's going to be exciting to hear more and just to continue to hear more from you. Can you hear me? Did it freeze? Oh, I think it froze. Okay, well, I don't know if she'll come back in time, but I'm going to close this out for Curative Collective. Amanda, if you could make me the full screen really quick. And then I am going to close this out for Curative Collective. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's been exciting. Stay tuned for next week, and we will come back. There's Lisa. Lisa, we're just saying goodbye to everyone. And
bye, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and for setting this beautiful table as you always do. It's always a joy and a pleasure to talk with you.
Always a pleasure to talk with you. And thank you for joining us in this conversation. Take care, everyone.